David, shepherd, psalmist, and king, after God's heart. I had mentioned the last time we were together that we were going to be looking at David becoming king. Well, as you are aware, we didn't get that far. But tonight, we will. I know we will. If we get past verse 1 of 2 Samuel 2, we will see him as king. But that's my anticipation anyway. We'll see how it goes. All right, 2 Samuel chapter 2, and I'd like for us to read verses 1 through 4.
After this, David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah?" And the Lord said to him, "Go up." David said, "To which shall I go up?" And he said, "To Hebron." So David went up there, and his 2 wives also, Ahinoam of Jezreel, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. And David brought up his men who were with him, everyone with his household, and they lived in the town of Hebron. And the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. When they told David, it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul.
I guess I was looking at the first half of verse 4. So we'll leave it there. They anointed David king over the house of Judah, period. So then we'll pick up the balance of verse 4.
So 1 verse 4a.
4a, yes, 4a. All right, so what has transpired up to this point recently? David has received news about the death of Saul and Jonathan, the defeat of the armies of Israel by the Philistines, and he has put this Amalekite messenger to death because he had taken credit for the death of Saul and thinking that he was going to be rewarded handsomely for it. So David was, by this man's own mouth, bringing judgment upon him, and it was at the edge of his sword. So now, upon that, and David giving this lament regarding Saul and Jonathan, and how the mighty have fallen. Now we see his heart once again, right? What's the very first thing we see after the dealing with Saul and Jonathan is complete? What does David do? Yeah, he inquires of the Lord. And I'll remind us just to speak louder so that it's going to pick up for online viewers to be able to hear. He inquires of the Lord. And what does he ask? Shall I go up to any of the towns of Judah? Now, we see 2 things here. One is that he is not presuming to do anything. Because for him, remember, he is the anointed king. And all along, his mighty men, his band of warriors, have been rooting for him. Come on, let's take the kingdom. Let's take the throne. We saw it on 2 different occasions. One when David was in the cave of Adullam, and then another time when Saul was again pursuing him, and the Lord had brought a great sleep upon Saul and his army so that David was able to come and take some of his belongings and could have killed him, right? David refused to do so because he was trusting the Lord for the Lord's timing. Well, it would appear that now is the time for him to move, wouldn't it? Saul is dead. So I'm the anointed king. Obviously, I'm supposed to take over. That's what it would appear to be. So he could have just presumed to do something about it and then head up and proclaim himself as king. But he doesn't do that. He inquires of the Lord first. What do I do now? What's next? Do I stay where I am? Do I move elsewhere? What's involved here? Now, he says, do I move up to go into any of the cities of Judah? Because where is he right now?
Philistine territory.
Philistine territory. Yeah, let's have a look at that just for a moment. We'll have a look at our screen to refresh ourselves of Ziklag. All right, remember this city was given to David, and it had been in Israelite control from that time onward. So Ziklag now became Israelite possession. But nevertheless, he's still in Philistine territory. So he inquires of the Lord, do I go up into the cities of Judah? So he doesn't just presume to do so. He's no doubt he's being encouraged by his men. All right, David, it's prime time. Let's get moving here. But he doesn't presume to do this. So he inquires of the Lord. And when we see, he says to go up, and the Lord says, he said to him, go up. And then David said, or the Lord said to Hebron. All right, so David goes to Hebron. Where is Hebron? In Israel. Oh, good guess. Do I go up into the cities of Judah? Then yes. So obviously he's in Judah. Can you picture where Hebron is? Let's have a look at Hebron. You give it another click. It should highlight it. There you go. There's Hebron. All right. So we have Hebron before us. Tell me, what is there of significance of Hebron? It's near Carmel.
That's not
But that's not Mount Carmel.
Oh, okay.
That's the place where they make the caramel for the caramel chocolate. No.
Oh, okay.
This is
Where
a
it came
different
from.
Carmel, okay? Mount Carmel is, to give an idea, just for determination, this is, I lost my mouse. So it's right here is Mount Carmel, which is related, of course, to Elijah. That's what is most well known for. And you had clicked on where? Yes. So Mount Carmel is up northwest. So they're down by Carmel, but all right, so what does that mean for us? Not much, as far as being close to Carmel. What is significant about Hebron?
It's near Jerusalem.
All right, near Jerusalem. How near?
Hop, skip, and jump away.
Hop, skip, and a jump away. All right, well,
3 days journey.
from Hebron may be a day's journey to Jerusalem. Now we're talking about walking, right? We're not talking about getting onto the Mustang. It's not riding. Yeah, well, okay. Here you can see. I've got to come close to my map because it's so small on this screen. All right, so you can see Jebus, which will become known as Jerusalem, but it's not in Israelite control as of yet. So yeah, it's about 15 miles away. So Bethlehem, you can see it on the map, I believe, is about 5 miles south of Jebus. Jerusalem, is it on there? All right, so I've got a.
Bethlehem. Bethlehem. I thought it was
I don't have Bethlehem on there. No, it's not. No, it's not there. All right, so nevertheless, we're about 15, 20 miles, something like that, just guesstimating because I haven't measured it, but something along those lines to Jerusalem. So it's not in the neighborhood. You're not going to go visit somebody this afternoon, likely. Okay, you're not going for coffee and coming back home. So pick up the phone.
There wasn't a camel.
All right, so Hebron. Where did we first see Hebron? In the book of? Take a guess. First to see it. Genesis. All right, in relation to Abraham. Abraham, he comes into the land of Canaan. Remember, the Lord brought him from Ur of the Chaldeans. When he comes in, the first place he arrives, well, he comes through Dan, and then the first place of mention, though, is Shechem. And then he'll make his way down to Mamre, or the trees of Mamre, which is otherwise known as Hebron. We'll also see it as Kiriath Arba. All right, so those are other names that are related to Hebron. So the first place we see is that this is where he settles for a time, Abraham. So we bring it back, first place of mention is in connection with the father of what was referred to most often as the father of the faith, right? Father of the faith, father of the faithful. It's interesting that the Lord directs him to go there instead of somewhere further north or to Jebus itself to try to take it or in the region around it. He doesn't direct him to go to Gibeah, which had been Saul's home base.
Where did he follow the instruction?
Yeah, because it could have been.
Other people haven't been doing
Yeah, it could have very easily been Hebron. Like I was kind of hoping something a little more, whatever, right? So he's not being fussy or picky about where it is that he's being told to go. He's saying, all right, Hebron it is. So Abraham, father of the faith, and it's there connected with Abraham. What else do we know during Abraham's time dealings with Hebron? What takes place in Hebron? That's where he buries Sarah. And then that's where his son buries him. And then that's where his grandson buries his son. Abraham's grandson buries his son. So there's Abraham and Sarah are buried in Hebron. We also see that Isaac and Rebekah are buried in Hebron. We also see that Jacob and Leah is buried in Hebron.
Yeah, she was buried
Where's Rachel buried?
on the road to Bethlehem.
On the road to Bethlehem in a place called Ephrath. Yeah. So that gives us a little bit of connection to what's taking place. It's the only place of real estate that Abraham owned in the land of Canaan. He lived in the land of Canaan, but it's the only piece of property that he owned. That field in Hebron, which became his ancestral burial place. Pardon? Yeah. All right, so there's great connection to this where it's a demonstration of those who walk by faith will be led by the Lord, and that Abraham is closely connected, even to today, where the three major faiths in the world, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, will visit this site and see it as a place that's considered distinct or revered because of Abraham and the grave that is there, the tomb. All right, so what else is going on in Hebron?
that. Do they know where those graves are?
Yes, yeah, they know where they are. So if you were to go to Hebron today, you could go and see the site where they are buried. What else going on in Hebron? Anything else? So that's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the three patriarchs. What else going on in Hebron? Okay, so
Was it Caleb?
Caleb took that place. Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So we'll look at that in just a moment. But yes, you're right. So that's one I wanted to connect on. But we're going to take it in order here. Let's look at the people of Israel. When they came out of Egypt, they are 11 days away from 11 days journey away from the promised land. And so what does the Lord tell them to do in Numbers chapter 13? Send 12 spies into the land. All right, so 12 spies go into the land, and while they are there, they end up discovering that the land is vast and large and plentiful and bountiful. And one of the places actually we come to Numbers chapter 13, verses 21 to 24. Numbers 13, verse 21.
Just 21?
21, what did I say, to 24? Yes, please.
So they went up and explored the land from the desert of Zin as far as Rehob toward Lebo Hamath. They went up through the Negev and came to Hebron, where Ahimanem, Ashia, and Tamala, the descendants of Anak, lived. Hebron had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt. When they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them, along with some pomegranates and figs. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites had cut off there.
So we have them coming. The last place that is mentioned before they're coming back home or back to their home camp is what? The place of Hebron. And lastly, what we see here is the Valley of Eshcol. Now, here's what's going on in the Valley of Eshcol and in Hebron. Let's have a look at our screen again. Just so we can get some bearings. Oh, I lost my... There we go. All right. So here we have the Valley of Eshcol. We've got Hebron is right next to it. Okay, so the Valley of Eshcol Hebron is an elevated area. And then the Valley of Eshcol is at the foothills of Hebron. So Hebron was a very fruitful place. Eshcol literally means cluster. So this is where David is being told to come, because there's a lot of significance going on in this location. It's the place where the patriarchs were. It's a place where Abraham is first settling when he comes into the land. It's a place where he had the only place of property. So it's a sort of a down payment, if you will. It's a deposit by faith, anticipating the Lord is going to bring to pass his promises. He's going to bring him into the land that flows with milk and honey. So we see the evidence of the produce of the land. And who lives in Hebron? What kind of people?
Anax.
The Hebronites.
Anak.
The descendants of Anak. And so what are the descendants of Anak? What does that mean to us? They're giants in the land. All right. And it was with that report that the 10 spies says we can't go in because there's giants who live there. Yeah, there's a lot of produce. It's a lot of good that's going on, but we can't go in because if we do, the land is going to devour us. Well, Joshua and Caleb, they were of a different spirit. They said, we will go in, the Lord helping us. Because they knew the promise of God, right? That giants weren't going to be the ones that would stop them from coming in. The only thing that could stop them from coming into the land and possessing the land would be their lack of faith themselves. Yeah. Let's have just a look at some of the produce going on in the land near the Valley of Eshcol.
That's a cluster.
How's that for a cluster of grapes? Boy, you'd... there's quite a lot. Let's look at the next one. So that's a couple of people standing beside that cluster of grapes. So when we think cluster of grapes, they had to carry it on a pole between 2 men on their shoulders. It doesn't necessarily mean that the grapes were like globes, like basketballs, right? They took off, the branch was so full of grapes that they had to carry it on a pole. Well, obviously, as they're carrying that, they can't travel by stealth, can they? They're in a land that is not very hospitable as far as they're concerned, because in that region of Hebron live the Anakim, the giants. Well, if you want to avoid giants, you want to be as inconspicuous as possible. Well,
Hide behind a cluster of grapes.
so you get a massive cluster of grapes that you hide behind, and the giants, they don't notice the grapes moving, that cluster moving so much. Did you see something over there? That's just a cluster of grapes. Don't worry about it. Okay, so yeah.
Stop drinking. Fruit from the grapes.
Yeah. There's lots. Don't worry about it. No big deal. It was on the basis of that event. Here, I've given you the wrong picture there, folks. Sorry, I thought I was moving my screen back. You got a preview of what's coming next. Okay. It was on that event that what happened? The basis of their negative report, their bad report, that the people listened to the bad report and they all complained. And as a result of that, the Lord sentenced them, judged them, and said, because of your unbelief, you're not going in. You'll be here for 40 years in this wilderness. And your children, who you were afraid would be consumed by the land, they will be the ones that go ahead of you instead of you yourselves. So it was a difficult time, but it was also a time of anticipation that we haven't lost out altogether. Our children are going in. Our posterity are going to go ahead of us, although we're not going to get to go there. One more thing that we're going to look at before we, I guess two more things, we'll put it that way. So the next one is what had been mentioned shortly ago in Judges chapter 14. They're finally in the land. And they're going throughout the land. They've been conquering. And when they arrive there,
Judges 14?
excuse me, Joshua, thank you. Joshua chapter 14.
So unusual.
6 to 15.
Mistakes.
Someone's got to take care of the misspeakings.
It's usually your wife.
Yeah, sometimes my brain just goes ahead of my mouth, and my mouth is trying to play catch up. And that's what there's oftentimes when I'm teaching or preaching, the devil will be like, so yeah, it's just so much. You just don't want to pack it in. Anyway, so bear with me if that happens. If you're watching online, you can just press. There's a little setting at the bottom of your screen that you can set it to 3/4 of the speed, half the speed, and half the speed if I'm speaking fast. You'll be listening to me regularly. Okay, so in Joshua chapter 14, the land is being conquered, and now there's allotments being given, mostly to the tribes, but we have some individuals and a few individuals, not least of which is Caleb. All right, so let's pick it up here in verse 14. Chapter 14 and verse 6. And it's a lengthy part, but I think that we will. Let's begin reading, Todd, and then I may get you to skip down a couple of verses, all right?
Then the people of Judah came to Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb the son of
Jephunneh.
The Kenizzite said to him, "You know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, in
Kadesh Barnea.
Kadesh Barnea."
So just to give our attention, Kadesh Barnea was the place that they were staying when they were told, send in the spies, and then they came back to that place. It was only an 11-day journey to go into the promised land from that point. All right, so continue.
I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and I brought him word again as it was in my heart. But my brothers who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. Yet I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore on that day, saying, "Surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you and your children forever, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, just as he said, these 45 years since the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses. While Israel walked in the wilderness, and now, behold, I am this day 85 years old. I am still as strong today as I was in the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was then, for the war and for going and coming."
All right, let's stop there for a moment. So back in verse 9, notice what he says. Moses swore on that day, "Surely the land on which your foot has trodden shall be an inheritance for you." This is the very same thing that the Lord will speak to Joshua at the beginning of his instructions, in the beginning of Joshua chapter 1. It's the same thing that the Lord speaks to Abraham. It's the same kind of wording. It says, everywhere that your foot shall be placed, I'm going to give to you as an inheritance. When the people of Israel came into the promised land and Joshua was leading them by the direction of the Lord, back in Joshua chapter 5, we read about the angel of the Lord, who is the Lord himself, Jesus, the commander of the army of the Lord, gives him instructions to go in and going to conquer Jericho. But before they do, some things they need to take care of. And one of them is once they are circumcised, coming over the Jordan River, rolling off of the reproach of the Egyptians, that they are to set up their camp. And that place was called, anybody know what the camp on the west side of the Jordan is called? Gilgal. And in a previous series of studies, we've looked at this before. And Gilgal means rolling, but it has the idea of a foot everywhere that you went. And so you look at it's a pretty poor looking foot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Boy, looks more like a peanut. Okay. Trying to deal with that toes. All right. You want to shoot? Just one sec here. Okay. Sandal. All right.
Close enough.
It's a sandal.
It's a sandal, all right? The sole of a sandal. And if you're to do an aerial overview of Gilgal, this is what you'll see with stone walls, markings that they have made up, and that you would have the location of the tabernacle therein. So we've looked at that in the past. We're not going to take time to do that sort of thing tonight, just to refresh our minds and something for you to dig into. You can look at it online. You can find that sort of information. So everywhere. So with this, it was a picture of a sole of the foot. Everywhere they placed their foot, the Lord was going to give them. And look at how Caleb is speaking here. He's talking about, when I was 40 years old, I went into this land, and I trusted the Lord for it then. Here I am 45 years later, and I'm just as strong today as I was then. My strength has not diminished for war and for coming and for going. How is it that somebody 85 years old can be just as strong as he was at 40?
What be the Lord?
It's God. And you say, well, I'm not even 85, and I'm not what I was when I was 40, or I'm not what. We need to keep in mind here that what he's saying is not as much what he can lift, what he can bench press. He's talking about my strength in trusting God is just as great now as what it was then. Meaning that I'm sure it's not my strength that's going to get me through this, it's his. So the strength of the Lord never diminishes, does it? So this is what he's speaking about here. That strength has not diminished. Now, I said he's given me, so he says, give me the hill country. Give me the hill country. The hill country is not the easy country. But he says, give me the hill country, because that's where the giants are. Give me Hebron. What I saw there, I want. And the giants didn't intimidate me. Well, okay, maybe a little, but my faith is greater than my intimidation. Right? So, they're there with fortified cities. And it may be that the Lord will be with me, and I'll drive them out just as the Lord said. Do you see the richness of the connection of history with the place that's called Hebron? David has been giving evidence of this kind of faith from the very moment we've been introduced to him. He is a man after God's heart, isn't he? So he exhibits these aspects or characteristics of someone who is after God's heart, the one who pursues God's heart, and the one who's being shaped by God's heart. So similarly with Abraham, he's exercising this kind of faith. Similarly with who else? I'm missing one between this. Numbers. Pardon me? Yeah, the grapes. Those who are coming in to spy out the land, Joshua and Caleb, the first time around. That he's got faith. He's not waiting until somebody else tries this out. David saying, I'm going for this. Giants, and he's already experienced it, right? Goliath. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? Yes, he was. And we have the event here with Caleb saying, all right, here I am 45 years later. Time has not changed the promise of God. Time hasn't changed it. And David's saying the same thing. Time has not changed the promise of God. When did God anoint him to be king? Over 10 years ago. Close to 15 years ago. Time has not changed the strength of God's promise. It's not diminished his ability to bring it to pass. And it's not dimmed God's memory. We don't have to remind God of his promise in order for him to say, oh, yeah, right. Exactly. It's more like you, more like me. All right. That's not the last time we see Hebron. One other time that we want to look at is in Joshua chapter 20. Joshua 20, verses 1 to 7.
Then the Lord said to Joshua, tell the Israelites to designate the cities of refuge as I instruct you through Moses, as I instructed you through Moses, so that anyone who kills a person accidentally and unintentionally may flee there and find protection from the avenger of blood. When he flees to one of these cities, he is to stand in the entrance of the city gate and state his case before the elders of that city. Then they are to admit him into this city and give him a place to live with them. If the avenger of blood pursues him, they must not surrender the one accused, because he killed his neighbor unintentionally and without malice aforethought. He is to stay in that city until he has stood trial before the assembly and until the death of the high priest who is serving at that time. Then he may go back to his own home in the town from which he fled. So they set apart Kadesh in Galilee in the hill country of
Naphtali.
Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim, and
Kiriath Arba.
that is Hebron, in the hill country of Judea.
So we'll stop there.
Okay.
Notice Hebron is designated also as what? City of refuge. There's 6 of them. 3 of them on the west of the Jordan, 3 of them on the east. And each of the 3 are located in the southern, in the middle, and the northern parts of the country. So that they're evenly dispersed. So that somebody who needs to flee to a city of refuge, they don't have to take off and be over 100 miles in order to get there. They're within a day's journey of any place really in Jerusalem or in Israel in order to get to one of these cities of refuge. Which is quite a consideration that David, the Lord is instructing him to go up. Shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah? Yes. Where? Hebron. This is where David begins. He goes up to Hebron, rich with heritage, rich with symbolism, rich with meaning for the very present today. And if I'm not mistaken, was it not, Samson, did he bring the gates of Gath up to Hebron? That just popped into my mind. 10 extra points if you find that. He went to the city of Gath and took the gates of the city, carried them on his back, and he took them, I think, to Hebron. If you find that, just let me know. Might be taking a risk now to continue teaching while everybody's now engaged in looking for this search. This is what Bible study is about, right? Search, seeking things out. Gath. From chapter 14 onwards.
Chapter 16, verse 3.
16 and verse 3.
Oh.
Judges. At midnight he arose, took hold of the doors of the
Yeah.
gate of the city and the two posts, and pulled them up, bar and all, and put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is in front of Hebron. Do you see where Hebron is? On the map. Let's see if we can... Gath. See the best map that we have here, if it's on it. Let's see if we can... Here we go. Okay. If we come back to the one with the Valley of Eshcol, Hebron, we'll be able to find Gath and see the proximity of the two. So we've got Gath, which is right here. Pardon me?
There's too many maps on here. I'm not sure which is which.
That one right there. Okay, so we've got, show online here, we've got Gath right here, taking it to Hebron. That's the location right there. And we'll bring it up to this point. Here's Gath, and here's Hebron. Gath, Hebron. Nice little walk. I don't like carrying garbage to the end of my driveway.
You have to imagine carrying gates of the city.
Gates of a city, bars and all. That means that this thing, wood, iron, it was significant, right? It was no easy or light task. All right, so here's David. We see in this rich heritage. And the Lord's brought him to this place. And he brings all of his men there, comes from Ziklag, comes now to Hebron. And we see in verse 4, the men of Judah came, and they anointed David king over the house of Judah. David doesn't send out word, does he? There's no indication. He doesn't send out flyers, leaflets, campaign posters. He makes his way. Word goes before him, and the men of Judah come and they anoint him king over the house of Judah. So David, he's king, but he's not king of all Israel at this point. He's king of Judah, the southern region of Israel. So that's basically, as we look at the map, that is, let's have a look at our map again. That is this gray area that takes in Judah. And we'll bring it up on the map here. No, you're all right. A lot going on. All right, this gray area is Judah, roughly speaking, okay? So here he is. He's arrived. Has he? To a point. But arrived at what? See, if his goal is simply on becoming king, he's missed it. But if his goal is to do the will of the Lord, then he's been arriving all along. He's been with the Lord all along. think of the people of Israel for a moment. When they came out of Egypt, and the Lord sends them from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land, and then they're judged. Then for the next 38 years, they are in the wilderness. Now, they were there for the next 38 years, but the Lord had said for 40 years you'll be in the wilderness. What it means is they've already been in the wilderness for 2 years. So 40 years in total is what they will be there for. Not another 40 years, meaning 42, but a total of 40 years. But while they were in the wilderness, the entire time they were in the wilderness, was there one day that they wandered? Did they wander in the wilderness? No. Because when we read the book of Numbers, we see, I believe it's in chapter 9, that they stayed in the camp until the cloud lifted. And they could have been there a day or a week. It could have been there, got there tonight, and we're breaking camp tomorrow morning. Could be a month. It could be for a prolonged period of time. And they were led every step of the way. But if you look at it and say, well, we didn't get to the promised land for another 38 years, so it was just a waste of time. Was it a waste of time? 38 years was not a waste of time. What did the Lord say regarding that time they were in the wilderness? I led you in the wilderness all this time. To do what? Humble you and to test you, to see if you would keep my commands, and that you would come to learn that man does not, and I fed you with manna that your forefathers have not known, so that you would see that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from God's mouth. So here David is. It's not he's finally arrived. It's that it's just one more step in this journey of faith. And that's what he's been learning all along the way. Some might say, well, those 10 to 15 years prior to this was preparation time. It was in the school of preparation. He was receiving his doctorate in humility and servitude and trust. And finally, he gets to graduate and become king. No, that's not what this is about. Sure, that other time was some testing time. But he's going to be tested from the anointing by the people of Judah as king onwards. It's not like pardon me?
It's not a done deal.
It's not complete. I finally arrived. Okay, there. Done. No. This is all part of the journey, part of the process. With this being the case, let's pick it up in 2 Samuel 2, verse 4b. So the second half of verse 4. Let's take it down on. You know what? I think I'm going to leave that for a moment. Basically, I'm going to summarize what's taking place in verses 4 through 7. And David, when he becomes king of Judah, he sends messengers to Jabesh Gilead. You remember Jabesh Gilead? What happened there?
Oh, this was people rescued Saul's body, son's bodies, and they buried them.
Exactly. So when David heard word about Jabesh Gilead, he sends word to them and he says, may you be blessed because you showed your loyalty to Saul and to his house this day. You didn't abandon him. And he says, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to do good to you. I'm going to make sure that you are recognized for this honor that you have bestowed upon Saul and his memory, his family. So he encourages them. And he says, I want you to know I'm king. So these are not empty words. It's not just a matter of me saying, blowing smoke and just giving you a compliment. He's telling them, I'm king of Judah. I'm going to look after this. However, the interesting thing is that David is king of Judah, and where's Jabesh Gilead? Further north. So Benjamin is just above Judah. So keep on going north, and you're going to be getting. So rather than dealing with the tribes, let's just go further north. They're in the Jezreel area, the Jezreel Valley, just southwest of Galilee. Meanwhile, David is king down near the Dead Sea, in the region all westward of the Dead Sea. If that helps give a bit of perspective. All right, so let's look at our map once again, and we can show you just a vicinity of where we're talking. David is king. He's in Hebron. His kingdom is the gray area, and Jabesh Gilead is over here in this vicinity right here. I think I'm on the right one. That's again, I'm a distance away from my screen, and it's a small map. So if you're close to your screen, you'll be able to see Jabesh Gilead, but it's just to the east of the Jordan River. That region, I was thinking of that being on the same latitude. I wasn't not that it was in the Jezreel Valley. So I misspoke because I was thinking of something different than actually was communicated. All right, so Jabesh Gilead is on the east side of the Jordan River. All right, so now let's take a look now at verses 8 through 11. Chapter 2. 2 Samuel 2, 8 through 11.
Meanwhile, Abner, son of
Ner.
The commander of Saul's army, had taken
Ishbosheth.
Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and brought him over to
Mahanaim.
and made,
That place there, yeah.
and made him king over Gilead, Ashburn.
The Asherites, let me help you out here.
Okay.
And Jezreel and Ephraim. And of course, we continue on with Benjamin.
All Israel.
Ishbosheth.
Ishbosheth, son of Saul, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. The house of Judah, however, followed David. The length of time David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months.
All right. Abner. He is the commander of Saul's army. He managed to escape the bloodbath that was Gilboa. Possibly. That escapes my data bank right at the moment. But if somebody's able to look that up and we can get an answer, that'd be great. Ishbosheth, by the strength that Abner gives to his credibility, becomes king over the remaining part of Israel. So we saw the map. Saul's uncle. Based out of where? Sorry? 1 Samuel 14, verse 50. 50. Abner is Saul's uncle. So we've got the strength of the family tie, and then the continuation, him being the commander of the army of Israel, to continue on to give strength, basically to endorse and to set in place, prop up Ishbosheth, and continue the dynasty of Saul's house. So Ishbosheth would then be the green area on the map. Okay? All of that area that's in green. Hard to distinguish on that map because of the distance.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing too.
Yeah, up close it's not the same. The distance there and with the lamp on the projector, it gives a little bit of difference. So all of that area, all of that, yeah. And then, yeah, it's not the different.
Well, it must be this part too, because it says this push-up.
Yep, all of that, right down to Jebus, that line. So the top of the Dead Sea, pardon me? So he's king over that area, but he's not king over that area. Literally, technically speaking. Why? Okay, so he's not anointed by Samuel. All right, so yes, that's a technical yes. Yes. Well, what I'm looking at is who's ruling that area? Who's ruling that land? Is Ishbosheth ruling? What happened at Gilboa? What happened to the people of those cities? They took off. No, they took off. And now they're on the other side of the Jordan River. They abandoned all their cities. And who's taking control of the cities? Philistines. The Philistines have basically invaded and taken over the northern part of Israel. So Ishbosheth, he's the king over all of that area. Technically speaking, he's king over that area. That's his domain. But is he reigning over that area? No, he's got to take it back if he's going to reign over it. He's ruling over an aspect of the kingdom that is severely, severely weakened. So he's taken an interesting thing. Interestingly enough, let's have a look again at this map and see where it is that he's taken to in verse 8. He brings him over to Mahanaim. This is, just give that click on that screen, please. This is his capital, Mahanaim. What's the issue of it being there? It's not even in the geographical land of the full-fledged aspect of Israel. He's on the east side of the Jordan River. Now, it doesn't mean that Israel didn't own that region, because that belonged to Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben. At least the half-tribe of Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben. But that's not the place that the Lord had initially intended for them to come into, for them to expand beyond that area. It was to be the west side of the Jordan River. And now, Ishbosheth, his capital is where? It's in Israel. It's still in Israel, but it's in the area that is not really originally intended for them to reign from. Ishbosheth, he's a weak king. Furthermore, he's not anointed. Mentioned Samuel, he isn't anointed him, right? Just because Samuel didn't anoint didn't mean that another prophet couldn't have, or another priest couldn't have anointed the king to be put in place. But he's not been anointed. He's just put in place by whom? Abner. Abner just says, okay, new king. Let's go. Move on, and let's establish this guy. Well, during this time, there's a relative peaceful coexistence between David and Ishbosheth. There's this sort of, I recognize you're Saul's son, and so I'm not just going to come, I'm not going to raise a sword against you, right? And Ishbosheth is not going to raise a sword against David. Why? David has a lot of support. Ishbosheth is weak. So there's just not going to happen. Well, let's take it now down to verse 12. We're going from 12. Let's take 12 to 17. Still in chapter 2. So we're at Brian, please.
Abner, son of Ner, together with the men of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, left Mahanaim and went to Gibeon. Joab, son of Zeruiah, and David's men went out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. One group sat down on one side of the pool, and one group on the other side. Then Abner said to Joab, let's have some of the young men get up and fight hand to hand in front of us. All right, let them do it, Joab said. So they stood up and counted off 12 men
for Benjamin, and Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 for David. Then each man grabbed his opponent by the head and thrust his dagger through his opponent's side, and then they fell down together. So that place in Gibeon is called
There's a challenge for you.
Hazreim. Battle that day was fierce, very fierce, and Abner and the men of Israel were defeated by David's men.
Okay.
Stop.
That's good. Yes, thank you. The two commanders, we've got Joab and we've got Abner. Joab is the commander of David's men. And so they gather together, pardon me? Yeah, also his nephew. They gather together at Gibeon. Any things going off in your mind about Gibeon? We'll look at that in just a moment. Just consider that for a short moment. Think about what's going on here with David and Ishbosheth's men. So Abner and Joab, two opposing, if you will, but colleagued in a sense, commanders, generals. And we have the men sitting around talking, discussing things. Then they come to this point and say, let's have a friendly competition.
Friendly, all right.
That's not the word I would use, but anyway.
All right, now you know the end of the story. So we look at it and say this isn't friendly. They start off as it being a friendly thing.
Arm wrestling.
Yeah, basically it was going to be let's have a competition, and it was intended to let's see who's got the better swiftness or speed or strength or endurance, that sort of thing. I remember when I was in grade 7. My next door neighbor and I, at lunchtime, we were doing something just out in the yard of the school, and he decides it's a big good idea. He was big into WWF. WWF? I wasn't. Anyway, he says let's do some play wrestling. Let's pretend that he was whoever was one of the wrestlers at that time, and he says, and you be so and so. I'm like, okay, let's wrestle. So we started off, a couple of goofy 13-year-olds, start wrestling. Just, okay, whatever, let's do this. Well, for me, it was just sport, just fun. Let's pass a bit of time. I'm not sure why we're doing this, but you thought it was a good idea, so here we are. All of a sudden, because I was getting the upper hand on him, for him, it's becoming a serious competition, which came to blows. And he starts pummeling on me. Well, I subdued him.
That's a
No.
cool way of saying it.
I wasn't wanting to engage in a fight, and I wasn't turning to blows to him. I basically just subdued him. I put him in headlock. And then a teacher or somebody came along and took us to the principal's office, because to them, it's now a fight. And as far as my neighbor was concerned, it had turned into a fight. I was trying to prevent it from becoming something weird. And anyway, I ended up we got suspended. So what was intended just to be a sporting thing turned into something that wasn't intended. Nobody said uncle.
They certainly didn't hear.
Anyway, confessions of a seventh grader. A seventh grader.
Uncle Abner.
Yeah, right. Anyway. Who knew? Yep. That your pastor was the playground champion.
You were smaller than him.
I was smaller than him, yep. Yeah, I was the small guy on this. Anyway, moving right along. In similar fashion, this is the kind of thing, it started off innocently enough. And then all of a sudden, you've got 24 guys laying dead on the ground. And what ends up taking place from that point is that Joab rises up and basically flexes his muscles more, and Abner retreats. He says, all right, we admit you're the bigger more strong of the two fighting forces here. Quite a drastic thing to be taking place. But it's interesting where it occurs, at Gibeon. What's significant about Gibeon? We go back to Joshua. Joshua, he's coming into the... Pardon me?
The Gibeonites deceived Joshua because he did not ask, inquire of the Lord about this people that came saying, oh, our loaves of bread were fresh and now they're moldy and our shoes were out and all that.
Right. So they have conquered Jericho. This is Joshua chapter 9. They've conquered Jericho. They decide, let's go against Ai and Bethel, and they ended up becoming victorious of that after a setback. We're not going to take all the time to get into the details. In chapter 9, the Gibeonites, they are aware that this mass of people, Gibeonites, they're a tribe among the Amorites. The Lord was going to drive out the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Canaanites, the Amorites, Perizzites, etc. So these are one of the armies or one of the enemies that the Lord said you are to drive out. And because they had put on these old clothes, they took bread and let it sit for many days before they came to Joshua. They appeared before him with the ruse that they were from a distant land, and they would have heard the fame of the people of Israel and their God, and they would like to make a treaty with them. Joshua decided, let's do this, without consulting with the Lord, right? And they made the treaty, and then they discovered that they were their neighbors. And not just neighbors, but they are very close neighbors. Where are the people of Israel camped at right now? Where's their home base? Gilgal. So Gilgal is very close to Jericho. Let's have a look at our map. Here we've got the tribes of Israel. So we'll do the next one. Yeah. We've got the tribes of Israel. Let's zoom in on this next slide. And we're going to have a look. Here in the yellow area is Jericho. So this is the region of Gilgal. All right, so let's take a look here. This is Gibeon. The blue dot, the blue pointer is Gibeon. Yep. And it's in the tribe of Benjamin. So the red circled, yeah. So that's, Gibeon is in the tribe of Benjamin. Who's got hometown advantage here? Ishbosheth, because he's from Benjamin. He's from the tribe of Benjamin. So it's hometown advantage for home turf for Ishbosheth, for Abner and his men. David, he is on, Joab and his men, they're on foreign soil in a sense, right? They're outside of their domain. Let's have a look now at, we have, just 1 second, folks. There we are, okay. We don't want to look at that just yet. This is what's taking place. They're in Gibeon. And this is where the Gibeonites, they're very close to Gilgal, weren't they? And they're successful in their deception. And they had to hold to their treaty terms, but Joshua made them wood choppers and water carriers, made them servants, subservient to them. But nevertheless, the Amorites are still living amongst them. In this place, there's more going on. Let's go for a moment to Psalm 78. You know what? I think that's going to take us with more detail than we have time for. I'll leave Psalm 78 with you, all right? Verses 60. I encourage you to have a look at this later. Psalm 78, verses 60 through 69. Particularly 67 through 69. So 60 and then 67, 69. It's speaking about the tabernacle, which was taken from Shiloh. And Shiloh, we look at this next area. It was in Ephraim, and Psalm 78 speaks about that it was the presence of the Lord was taken from Ephraim. It was taken from Shiloh, which was in their region, and ultimately the altar, the Ark of the Covenant was left at this place, Kiriath Yearim. And now, during David's day, the tabernacle is at, take a guess. What place? We've already mentioned it. What? Gibeon. The tabernacle is at Gibeon. And we read about that in 1 Chronicles, several places. Chapters 13, 16, and 21. That the tabernacle is at Gibeon, but the Ark of the Covenant is not. They're not in the same place. Spoiler alert, we're going to be looking at David, who's going to bring the Ark of the Covenant. Once he takes possession of Jerusalem, he's going to go and get the Ark of the Covenant and bring it to Jerusalem. But for now, the ark is separate from the tabernacle. Do we understand how disjointed that is? Because what is one of the defining, or if not one of, or if not the, then one of, but I would argue the defining article connected to the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant. But for the past 80 years almost, close to it, the ark has not been in the tabernacle. And the tabernacle right now is located at Gibeon.
Where's the ark?
The ark is in Kiriath Jearim. The tabernacle is in Gibeon. Where is this skirmish taking place? Gibeon. See, they are having this meeting. Why are they meeting together? In what they're doing, they're not seeking the Lord in the midst of this. It's just a couple of generals and a couple of competing forces that wind up getting into a lot of trouble because of really an absence of seeking the presence of God. These men are about their own pursuits.
Trying to settle who's going to be king of Israel, are they not?
Yeah, there's that. Those are the underlying tones, because they know that each has their respective king and respective kingdom, and one knows that their king is very strong and has proven himself and has won the hearts of the people. The other one, everybody knows that king is not strong, and he's same flesh and blood as the one who led the kingdom, the nation, into ruination, and the people have fled. And the hopes of all of the people really are resting on David. Well, this undercurrent is, this struggle. Let's have this contest, but really, in the back of everybody's mind, it's, we're better than you are. We're going to show you. And we're not going to necessarily take the first move, but if push comes to shove, we're going to end this thing. Well, in the process of all of this, there's a battle that ensues, And one of Joab's brothers pursues after. Let's not get lost in the names. So Abner is the commander of Ishbosheth's army, and Joab is the commander of David's. And one of Joab's younger sons, he pursues after Abner. And Abner is stronger. He's more skilled in the battle. And he tells Joab's brother, "Stop pursuing me. Why are you going to make me kill you? You're going to basically have to face your brother Joab." And he refuses to do so. And Abner, he thrusts his spear through his stomach, and he dies. Well, now there's a bloodlust by Joab when he finds this out. And he wants to take revenge. Abner doesn't run to one of the cities of refuge, but Joab lives in one of the cities of refuge. So you would think that would be more profound for him, but he really doesn't take it into account. In all of this process, it's setting a stage for I'm not sure why that's like that. Sorry about that, people online, online viewers. I'm having a hard time with that tonight. This sets the stage for what will be taking place as David gets ready to come into the full kingdom. He's going to become king of both of the United Kingdom, basically. There's going to be somewhat of a civil war for a very short time, but David is going to show himself that he's not working underhandedly. He's working, he's ruling with integrity. And so he deals in some matters here in a way that shows his heart, and wins the people. So that there's not some that are saying, yeah, but David, he's just an underhanded backstabber. He shows himself that he's a man after God's heart. Still with imperfections, because but the Lord is shaping him and getting him ready to come into Jerusalem as the capital. We'll pick that up when we're together next week.